In this life, there are paths we choose. And then there are paths that are chosen for us. For the kids of the Oak Street apartments, the path home from the bus stop wasn't just a stretch of concrete. It was a gauntlet. It was a place of fear, controlled by shadows that had names and faces. But today, that route was about to be redrawn by men who understood that sometimes the only way to get rid of shadows is to show up with so much thunder they have nowhere left to hide. It was 3:15 p.m. A Tuesday. For the Gentle Bikers Motorcycle Club, it was just a pit stop. 5 of them, led by their club president, Bear, were fueling up their bikes. Bear was a mountain. He stood 6'5", with a chest as broad as a barrel. His sleeveless black leather vest, strained across his back, bore their club patch. His arms were a roadmap of tattoos, with a prominent skull inked onto his bicep. His hair was slicked back, and his thick beard was graying at the chin. He was a gentle giant, but a giant nonetheless calm, stoic, and intimidating as hell. He was laughing quietly with his VP, Wrench, when a shadow fell over his boot. He looked down. Standing there, trembling so hard he looked like he might vibrate apart, was a little boy, 8 years old, maybe 60 pounds, soaking wet. He was tiny for his age, drowning in a worn-out blue school uniform. This was Leo. Leo wasn't looking at the tattoos, the leather, or the gleaming chrome. He was staring at Bear's face with a desperate, frantic focus. In his small, clenched fist, he held a single, crumpled dollar bill. Bear and his crew went quiet. They were used to people staring, but this was different. This wasn't fear of them. This was a child who was terrified of something else entirely. Bear motioned to his men, and one by one, the deep, rattling rumble of the motorcycles died. The sudden silence was heavy. Bear knelt, a slow, deliberate movement. He put himself on the boy's eye level. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble. "You okay, son?" Leo took a shuddering breath. He had to look straight up, even with Bear kneeling. He ignored the other 4 bikers, who had formed a silent, protective semicircle behind him. He stepped forward and did the one thing he had the courage to do. He tugged on the fabric of Bear's vest. His voice was barely a whisper, so quiet Bear had to lean in closer. "Mister, please." Leo's small, dirty hand pushed the crumpled dollar bill toward the massive biker. "I only have this $1, but you can have it. My sister's bus is coming. The bad boys are waiting for her in the alley. Please, can you just walk my sister home? $1. A child's entire fortune, offered up to hire an army." Bear didn't look at the money. He looked at the boy's eyes. He saw an old soul, a kid forced to be a protector when he should have been playing with toys. He didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He took the plea with absolute seriousness. "Keep your money, son," Bear said, his voice gentle but firm. He placed a massive, gloved hand on Leo's small shoulder. "We don't take payment for this. What's your name?" "Leo." "Sir." "Okay, Leo. Tell me everything, and don't leave out a single detail." Leo's story tumbled out, frantic and raw. He and his one-year-old sister, Maya, lived at the Oak Street apartments. The only path from the school bus stop to their building was a narrow, L-shaped alley. For the last month, a group of high school teenagers had claimed it as their territory. "They're led by a guy named Shank," Leo whispered. looking around as if Shank himself might appear. He's big. He makes all the little kids pay a toll to get through. Lunch money? Anything. Bear's jaw tightened. This wasn't mischief. This was extortion. What happened to your sister? Wrench asked, stepping forward. Leo's eyes flooded with fresh tears. Yesterday, Maya didn't have any money. So Shank and his crew. They grabbed her backpack. They threw it on the roof of the laundromat. She had her homework in it. When she cried, they just laughed. Leo wiped his nose on his sleeve. She told our mom. Mom called the police. But the police said they can't babysit an alley. They just drove by once and left. Shank saw it all. Bear's face was now carved from stone. He knew what came next. This morning, Leo said, his voice cracking, Shank found me before school. He said because Maya snitched, they were going to teach her a real lesson. He said he was going to be waiting for her today. He said she'd be. Really sorry. Bear looked at his watch. 3:19 p.m. What time does her bus get here? Leo? 3:25. Leo choked out. She's going to be there in 6 minutes. They're waiting for her right now. I know they are. Please, you gotta help. The stakes were laid bare. And one 1-year-old girl, a 6-minute-long fuse, and a pack of teenage predators waiting in an alley. Bear stood up to his full height. He looked at Wrench. He looked at his other 3 brothers, Diesel, Ghost, and Doc. Not a single word was spoken. They didn't need to. This was their code. This was why they wore the patch. Bear turned back to Leo. Leo, your sister is going to get home safe today. That is a promise. But the boy's words echoed in his head. Mom called the police. They can't babysit an alley. Bear realized walking Maya home today wouldn't solve the problem. It would just delay it. Shank would be back tomorrow, and the gentle bikers wouldn't be there, unless they changed the entire map. Son, Bear said, walking her home isn't enough. Is it? They'll just come back. Leo's face crumpled, because he knew it was true. We're not just going to walk her home, Bear rumbled, pulling his phone from his vest pocket. We're going to redraw the route. We're going to make that alley a safe passage. For good. He dialed a number. This is Bear. I'm at the 7-Eleven on Oak. I'm calling in a code, Broken Arrow. No, it's not a brother. It's a kid. A whole neighborhood of them. I need every single member who isn't at work to be at the mouth of the Oak Street alley. 5 minutes ago. He hung up. He looked at Leo, whose eyes were wide with a mix of terror and awe. Leo, Bear said, we're not just going to walk your sister home. We're all going to walk her home. And we're going to have a little chat with these landlords about their lease being up. A child's desperate plea. A promise made in steel and leather. In that moment, Leo had done more than hire a few bodyguards. He had summoned an army. These men didn't hesitate. They didn't ask why. They asked where. If you believe in the gentle bikers, code that the strong have a duty to protect the weak, then show your support. Hit that subscribe button and become part of the family. And let us know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? There is no sound on earth quite like a Harley-Davidson engine coming to life. It is not a noise. It is a heartbeat. A sudden, mechanical thunder that promises action. Bear swung his leg over his bike and settled into the seat. Wrench handed a spare helmet to Leo who fumbled with the strap. Bear took it, his large, tattooed fingers deftly clicking the buckle under the boy's chin. "Hold on tight to me, son," Bear rumbled. Leo wrapped his small arms around Bear's waist, burying his face in the leather vest that smelled of gasoline and the open road. The 5 bikes roared out of the gas station, not as a scattered group, but as a single, disciplined unit. They moved through traffic with a fluid grace that belied their size. Leo's heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the raw, vibrating power beneath him. He had never felt so safe in his entire life. They were only 3 blocks away. It took them less than 2 minutes. As they turned the corner onto Oak Street, Leo's eyes went wide. The mouth of the L-shaped alley was just ahead, and it was already full. Bear's code broken arrow had been answered. It wasn't just 5 bikers. It was 30. 30 gentle bikers from 3 different local chapters, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their bikes were parked in a perfect, menacing double line, forming a wall of chrome and steel that blocked the entire street. Pedestrians were crossing the road to avoid them. Cars were slowing to a crawl. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and the low, idling rumble of 30 engines. The 5 bikers from the gas station rolled up and parked, completing the line. Bear killed his engine and lifted Leo off the bike, setting him on the sidewalk as if he weighed nothing. "Stay with Wrench," Bear commanded. "Don't move from this spot." Leo nodded, his eyes as wide as saucers, staring at the army his dollar had summoned. And right on cue, the high-pitched screech of air. Brakes cut through the rumble. The yellow school bus hissed to a stop at the corner. The doors folded open. A thin girl with a long brown ponytail and a nervous look on her face stepped off. This was Maya. She saw the wall of bikers and froze, her knuckles white as she clutched the strap of her new backpack. She scanned the crowd, her eyes darting, terrified. "Maya!" Leo screamed, waving his arm. Her head snapped toward the sound. She saw her brother, standing next to a giant in a leather vest. Her fear turned to pure, stunned confusion. She started to walk toward him, hesitant, and that's when the shadows came to life. The alley was a natural choke point, a trap, and the predators were waiting. From the darkness of the narrow path, 4 figures emerged. Teenagers, trying to look like men. The one in the lead. Shank? He was 17 but looked older. He was tall, with a mean, thin face and a stupid, cocky smirk. He held a half-empty soda cup in his hand. His 3 friends fanned out behind him, blocking Maya's path home. Well, Shank sneered, his voice carrying in the quiet. "Look who it is. Little snitch." "You miss your backpack?" Maya stopped dead. She was still 20 feet from the alley, and 30 feet from her brother. She was trapped in no man's land. I have to go home," she stammered. "Oh, you'll go home," one of his friends laughed, "after you pay the toll. And today, the price went up. For you and your snitch, Mom." Shank took a menacing step toward her. He raised the soda cup. "You look thirsty, Maya. Let me help you with that." "I wouldn't," a new voice said. It was Bear. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low, calm, gut-rumbling baritone, but it cut through the air like a razor. Shank and his crew froze. They turned. Their smirks vanished. They weren't looking at one biker. They were looking at 30. A silent, unmoving wall of men in black leather, all staring directly at them. The gentle bikers didn't move. They didn't shout. They just watched. Shank's bravado faltered. This wasn't in the plan. "What the hell is this?" he stammered. "A circus?" "No," Bear said, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. The other 29 bikers took one single, unified step forward with him. The sound of 30 pairs of boots hitting the pavement at once was like a drumbeat. Shank and his crew took an involuntary step back, deeper into the mouth of the alley. "This," Bear said, "is a change in management." He walked calmly across the street, his boots heavy on the asphalt. He stopped 10 feet in front of Shank. The teenager, who had seemed so big and scary moments before, suddenly looked like a child playing dress-up. "This is our business, old man," Shank spat, trying to recover his pride. "It's just a kid thing. Get lost." "A kid thing," Bear repeated. He nodded slowly. "Leo, come here." Leo, no longer afraid, darted away from Wrench and ran to Bear's side. Bear put his massive hand on the boy's head. "This boy," Bear said, his voice dangerously quiet, "just tried to hire me and my men to protect his sister from you. He offered us $1. His last dollar." He looked at Shank, and his cold but calm expression turned to ice. "He had to use his last dollar because you and your friends like to play kid things. You like to steal from children. You like to frighten little girls." "We were just messing around," one of the other teens yelled, his voice cracking. "You're done messing around," Diesel growled, coming up to Bear's left. "This path," Bear said, gesturing to the alley, "is now under new ownership. The toll is closed. Permanently." Shank, in a last, stupid act of defiance, reached into his jacket. "You can't tell us what to do." He never finished the sentence. Bear's hand moved faster than a man his size should be able to. He didn't punch. He didn't hit. He simply gripped Shank's wrist. The teenager's face went white. A small, ugly metal pipe clattered from his sleeve onto the concrete. Bear said, not even looking at the weapon. "Payment." "Thank you." He kicked it away without a second thought. He still had Shank by the wrist, his grip like a steel vise. "You've got two choices. Son, you and your friends can walk out the other end of this alley. And you never, ever come back. You never look at these kids again. You never even think about this block again." "Or what?" Shank hissed through gritted teeth, wincing in Bear's grip. Bear leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper only Shank could hear. "Or you can stay. And you can find out what happens when you threaten the family of 30 men who have absolutely nothing better to do." He let go. He pushed Shank back, hard. The teen stumbled into his friends. They were beaten. Not a punch was thrown, but they were utterly broken. Their power was gone. Bear turned his back on them. He faced his brothers. "Gentle bikers!" he roared. "Form a line." In a stunning display of silent discipline, the 30 bikers turned and formed two perfect, parallel lines, creating a safe, human tunnel from where Maya stood, all the way to the end of the alley. Bear looked down at Leo. He smiled, a true, warm smile this time. "Go get your sister, Leo," he said. "Walk her home." Leo stood tall. His fear was gone, replaced by a pride that puffed out his small chest. He walked past the towering bikers, who watched him with soft eyes. He walked right up to his sister, who was staring, speechless, tears streaming down her face. He took her hand. "It's okay, Maya," Leo said, his voice clear and strong. "I told you I'd fix it." The bad boys are gone. And together, the two children walked the surf gauntlet. But this time, it wasn't a place of fear. It was a corridor of angels. Leather-clad, tattooed angels who stood guard, their mere presence a promise. They walked past Diesel, past Wrench, past Ghost. Every biker nodded at the children as they passed. They reached the end of the alley and disappeared into their apartment building. Safe. Shank and his crew, humiliated and terrified, scrambled out the back end of the alley, running for their lives. Bear watched them go, his face settling back into its calm, cold mask. He turned to his men. "The route is redrawn," he said. "Job done. Let's ride." The thunder of 30 motorcycles leaving at once shook the windows of the Oak Street apartments. But this time, it wasn't a sound of intimidation. It was a sound of liberation. Shank and his crew were gone, their pathetic reign of terror dissolved in a cloud of exhaust and righteous fury. But for the gentle bikers, the job wasn't finished. A promise is a promise, and Bear had promised to redraw the route. For good. A knock, firm but respectful, echoed on the door of apartment 2B. Leo ran to open it. Their mother, Maria, stood behind him, her face pale and her hands trembling. She had heard the commotion, the engines, the shouting. She had been terrified, thinking a riot had broken out. When the door opened, she saw her two children, Leo and Maya, standing safe. And behind them, not a threat, but a savior. Bear stood in the doorway. He had taken his sunglasses off. His cold but calm eyes were surprisingly gentle. He was flanked by Wrench and Doc. "Ma'am," Bear rumbled, his voice respectful. "My name is Bear. Your son, Leo. He's one of the bravest men I've ever met." Maria put her hands to her mouth, tears welling. I heard the bikes, I thought. "What did you do?" "We had a conversation with the young men in the alley," Bear said simply. "We've explained to all them that their business here is finished. They won't be back. But they always come back," Maria whispered, the hope in her eyes warring with years of frustration. "I called the police. They did nothing." "We know," Wrench said, stepping forward. "That's why we're not the police. We don't just patrol. We protect." Bear looked at Maria. "This is our promise to you, and to every other family in this building. That alley is now under the protection of the gentle bikers. It is a safe passage, but we need to make it official. And this is what true justice looks like. It's not just about scaring away the monsters. It's about rebuilding the walls so they can never get back in. The bikers didn't just ride away. They stayed. 2 of them went to the laundromat, found the owner, and convinced him to get a ladder. Maya's backpack from the day before was retrieved. 4 more went to the local hardware store. They returned not with weapons, but with high-powered, motion sensor floodlights. Wrench and Doc, who ran an electrical contracting business, spent the next hour installing them, bathing the once dark alley in brilliant, unavoidable light. And Bear, he took 10 of his men on a little ride. Bear and 10 of his brothers walked into the precinct, their vests and boots echoing on the polished floor. The desk sergeant, who had previously dismissed Maria's call, looked up and nearly swallowed his tongue. "Can I—" "To help you?" the sergeant stammered. "Yes," Bear said, his voice calm and level. He placed both hands on the counter. "My name is Bear. I'm the president of the Gentle Bikers. I'm just here to file a report." A community watch report. Bear explained the situation. The extortion. The threats. The pipe Shank was carrying. And, Bear continued, I wanted to let you know that since your department is too busy to babysit an alley, my men and I will be taking over that responsibility. We've just installed new security lighting. And from now on, 2 of our members will be parked at each end of that alley every day at 3:25 p.m. just to make sure the children get home safe. The sergeant's face went red. Now, look here. You can't just, we can. Bear interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. And we will. We're not here to cause trouble, officer. We're here to end it. We've solved the problem you couldn't. You're welcome. He turned and walked out, his men parting around him. The message was delivered. The villains weren't just humiliated, they were rendered obsolete. The route wasn't just redrawn, it was fortified. That evening, the gentle bikers returned to apartment 2B. They didn't come empty-handed. They brought pizza, 10 large boxes, and sodas. They brought Maya a new, heavy-duty backpack, bought by Wrench. And they brought Leo a gift. It was a small, child-sized black leather vest. On the back, in perfect stitching, was the gentle biker's patch. Leo's eyes lit up, brighter than any of the new floodlights. You're a protector, Leo, Bear said, kneeling in front of him. Just like us. You're part of the family now. And we always protect our family. Maria watched, tears streaming down her face, as her son was hugged by a dozen of the most intimidating and kindest men she had ever seen. The fear that had lived in her apartment for months was finally, truly, gone, replaced by the smell of pizza and the rumble of laughter. The next day, at 3:25 p.m., 2 gentle bikers were there, parked like statues. And the day after that, and the day after that. But the bikers weren't alone. On the 3rd day, a few parents from the apartment building came out, holding cups of coffee for the 2 men. On the 4th day, more parents came. On the 5th day, the alley wasn't a gauntlet anymore. It was a block party. The gentle bikers had done more than just redraw a route. They had given the community its courage back. They had shown the shadows that the light was stronger. Shank and his crew were never seen on Oak Street again. The story of 30 bikers answering a child's call had spread through the local schools like wildfire. The alley was no longer a place of fear. It was a landmark. It was the alley the bikers protected. We are taught to look for heroes in shining armor. We're told they wear capes and fly through the sky. But that's just in the movies. In the real world, heroes are different. They are often the people no one sees, until they are the only ones willing to show up. They are the men who look intimidating, who are covered in leather and ink, but who will stop everything in their lives to answer the call of a child with a $1 plea. Heroes are the gentle giants. Leo learned the most important lesson of his life that day. Family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes, family is the one you find. Sometimes, family is a brotherhood of 30 men who will form a wall of steel and leather to make sure you and your sister get home safe. They proved that true strength isn't about who you can hurt, it's about who you choose to protect. If this story reminded you that heroes are real and that family is a choice, help us share that message. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and make sure you are subscribed to Gentle Bikers. Until next time, stand tall, protect the vulnerable, and be the one who shows up.